to our deep dive into Herman Melville's Moby Dick.
It's a book that, well, it's not just a simple whale tale, is it?
No, not at all.
Yeah.
You've given us such a range of excerpts, I mean, spanning, I guess you could say, from those early chapters, in Nantucket with all that atmosphere, to Ahab and his relentless hunt for the whale,
Yeah.
and even some of Melville's, I guess, just reflections on whales and the whole idea of whaling. So our mission today really is, I think, to kind of pull out the essence of Moby Dick from these passages, the themes, the characters, the symbolism, and give our listeners a sense of the just epic scale of this book.
Well, and I think what's really interesting is how Melville uses something so specific like a 19th century whaling ship to explore these huge themes, like obsession and fate and the nature of good and evil. I mean, it's all there.
It really is. And you see that right away in the section where Ishmael, who's our narrator, arrives in New Bedford looking for a place to stay. And he ends up at this place, the Spouter Inn, which is definitely not your typical bed and breakfast.
No. That's for sure. I mean, a bar shaped like a whale's jawbone. You don't see that every day.
It's such a great image, and it sets the tone for the whole book. It's this world where man and nature are constantly colliding, and the stakes are incredibly high.
Right.
And then you have Queequeg, who, this tattooed harpooner who ends up sharing a bed with Ishmael.
Described as a cannibal, no less. Which is kind of a jarring contrast, You have this seemingly civilized world of New Bedford.
Right.
And then this figure who just embodies the other, the unknown.
Yeah, and yet Ishmael isn't repelled by him at all. In fact, he's drawn to him. And I think that really gets at one of the core ideas in Moby Dick, this idea that we can find common ground with people who seem completely different from us.
Exactly. I think Melville is really challenging our assumptions about good and evil and, who we should fear and who we should embrace. And then there's the scene at the Whaleman's Chapel with Father Mapple's sermon.
Oh, yes.
Which you highlighted.
That's such a powerful part of the book.
I know.
I felt chills when I read it. I don't know about you.
Yeah.
It's almost like this prophecy of doom that awaits Ahab and his crew.
Right. It really foreshadows the dangers, both physical and spiritual, that these men are facing.
Right.
And it elevates whaling from just an industry into something with this profound moral and spiritual weight.
So we move from New Bedford to Nantucket, which is the heart of American whaling.
Yeah.
And Melville's description of it is fascinating.
Right.
He calls it the Tyre of this Carthage, which immediately gives you the sense of historical importance.
Yes. And this sense of impending decline, like those ancient cities.
Yeah.
It's a really subtle but powerful way for Melville to foreshadow what's going to happen to the Pequod.
And then we're introduced to the owners of the Pequod, Captains Peleg and Bildad, who have such distinct personalities. It's almost comical.
I know. Peleg is like this blustering old sea dog.
Yes.
And Bildad is this pious penny pincher.
Right. It's like Melville is setting up this microcosm of the larger conflicts that are at play in the novel. Instinct versus reason, experience versus faith, extravagance versus frugality.
Exactly. And then, of course, you have Queequeg, whose skills as a harpooner impress even Bildad.
It's amazing. It's a real testament to Queequeg's adaptability and his ability to just excel in this world that's so foreign to him.
Right.
But amidst all this, you also have this creeping sense of unease. That comes through, I think, in the passage you selected with Elijah, this mysterious figure who delivers these cryptic warnings about Ahab and the voyage.
Yeah, Elijah's like this kind of prophet.
Right.
A voice of warning hinting at the darkness to come. He embodies that superstitious side of whaling culture,
Yeah.
The belief in omens and premonitions and things like that.
And then we finally meet Captain Ahab, and that first glimpse of him is so striking.
Oh, yeah.
You immediately get a sense of his power, his intensity, but also this deep hidden wound.
He's such a larger-than-life figure, both physically and psychologically.
Absolutely.
The loss of his leg to Moby Dick has really transformed him.
It has.
And his quest for revenge has become all-consuming.
You can feel the tension building the moment he steps onto the deck.
It's like a storm gathering on the horizon.
It is. So from the very beginning, Melville sets the stage for this epic confrontation between man and nature, between obsession and reason, good and evil.
He does.
And he does it with such incredible detail and psychological insight that you can't help but be drawn into the story.
What I find remarkable is how he balances those grand themes with the very practical, the nitty-gritty details of life on a whaling ship. He doesn't shy away from the technical aspects of the hunt, the hierarchy of the crew, the dangers these men face every single day.
And it's those details that really make you feel like you're right there on the Pequod with them. Smelling the salt air, feeling the spray of the waves, hearing the creak of the timbers. It's all there.
And just when you're getting settled into this routine of whaling life, Melville throws in those chilling tales of past encounters with Moby Dick.
And those stories are what elevate Moby Dick from just a whale into this almost mythical, supernatural being.
It's like Moby Dick represents something much larger than himself. He becomes this symbol of the unknowable, the vastness of the universe, the forces that are just beyond our control.
So then Ahab's obsession takes on a whole new meaning. It's not just about revenge anymore. It's about man's futile attempt to conquer nature, to impose his will on a world that ultimately remains indifferent.
And that's where we see the philosophical depth of Moby Dick, I think. Melville isn't just telling an adventure story. He's really exploring these deep questions about human existence, the nature of good and evil, the limits of knowledge, the meaning of life itself.
And he does it all within this framework of this really thrilling adventure story, which is what I think makes Moby Dick so timeless and so enduring. There's something in it for everyone, no matter what their background is or their literary preferences are.
There's something about that combination of adventure and philosophy and psychological insight that just grabs you. It taps into our deepest fears and desires. And it makes us confront these really big questions that we all grapple with at some point in our lives. One thing that really struck me as I was looking at these excerpts is how Melville uses color to convey these deeper meanings.
Oh.
Specifically, I'm thinking about white.
Oh, that's so true. I mean, it's everywhere in the book, and it's obviously not just about a white whale.
Right, exactly. Melville really plays with our expectations because we usually think of white as, purity, innocence.
Yeah.
But in Moby Dick, it becomes much more ambiguous.
It does. And I was particularly drawn to that chapter that you picked out on the whiteness of the whale. It's like Melville takes us on this philosophical detour and explores all these different theories about what whiteness could mean.
And he doesn't give us any easy answers,
Yep.
does he?
Yeah.
It's like he's saying that the universe doesn't owe us explanations. We just have to grapple with its mysteries.
Yeah. You know, something else I noticed was this tension between science and superstition in the book.
Oh, interesting.
Because on the one hand, Melville gives us these incredibly detailed descriptions of whales and whaling techniques.
Yeah,
You can tell that he really did his research.
he did.
But then he'll turn around and present these almost mythical tales of Moby Dick,
Right.
blurring the lines between fact and fiction.
Totally. It's like those stories the sailors tell about the white whale,
Right.
where he's this almost supernatural being,
Yes.
capable of appearing and disappearing at will,
Yeah.
always one step ahead. It adds a whole other layer, I think, to the chase.
It does. And it makes you think about Ahab's obsession in a different way, too. What do you think is driving him? I mean, it seems like it goes beyond just revenge.
I think you're right. It's almost as if he's trying to assert his dominance over these forces of nature,
Yeah.
to prove that human will can triumph over the chaos of the universe.
But of course, it's a cautionary tale about the dangers of that kind of hubris.
Oh, absolutely.
Because Ahab's quest for revenge ultimately destroys him and everyone around him.
It does. But even with all the darkness and destruction in the book, there's also this remarkable sense of camaraderie among the crew.
Yes.
I love that passage you chose about the harpooneers having dinner in the cabin.
Oh, yeah.
It felt so human and relatable.
I know. It's like they're just sitting there stuffing their faces, joking around like they're not facing incredible danger every day.
Right. It's this reminder that even in the midst of this epic, almost mythic quest, these are still ordinary men, with ordinary needs and desires.
That's so true. And their bonds transcend race, culture, even religion. I mean, think about Ishmael and Queequeg. They come from completely different worlds, and yet they form this deep and abiding friendship.
It really speaks to Melville's belief in the power of human connection to overcome even the most profound differences. It's one of the things that makes the book so powerful.
It is. And on that note, I was really struck by the story of Pip, the young black cabin boy.
Oh, yeah.
It's such a heartbreaking episode, and it raises these really important questions about what Ahab's obsession is costing everyone.
Totally. I mean, Pip becomes a casualty of Ahab's monomania.
Mm-hmm.
And it makes you realize that even the most noble pursuits can have devastating consequences if we lose sight of our humanity along the way.
That's a good point. But then amidst all this tragedy, we also have these moments of resilience and even redemption, like the story of the blacksmith, for example, which you included in your selections. It's a glimmer of hope.
It is. It shows that we're capable of finding meaning and purpose even in the face of loss and suffering.
And it highlights, I think, the allure of the sea, The way it draws people who are seeking escape or a new beginning or maybe just a chance to test their limits. But ultimately, Moby Dick is a story about confrontation. And that climax with the 3-day chase and the final battle is one of the most intense and symbolic sequences, I think, in all of literature.
Oh, for sure. I mean, you can just feel the tension mounting with each passing hour as Ahab gets closer and closer to his prey.
And the descriptions of the sea and the whale and Ahab's just relentless pursuit are just breathtaking.
Melville's language is just so powerful and evocative. It creates these images that you just can't shake.
I was really captivated by the symbolism of the Pequod itself. And you picked out that passage where Melville describes the ship as this cannibal of a craft. It's such a powerful image.
It really is. The Pequod becomes this kind of microcosm of Ahab's obsession, this floating coffin that's consumed by its own destructive purpose. And its fate really foreshadows the destruction that Ahab brings upon himself and his crew.
That's right. And it's interesting to contrast the Pequod with the Rachel, that ship that Ahab encounters during the chase.
Oh, the Rachel, where the captain is searching for his lost son, and he begs Ahab to help.
Right. But Ahab, consumed by his obsession, refuses.
It's a turning point, I think. When you see just how far gone Ahab is, he's willing to sacrifice everything, even the lives of others, to get to Moby Dick.
And of course, in the end, the Pequod is destroyed. Taking Ahab and almost all of the crew down with it, only Ishmael survives, clinging to Queequeg's coffin.
That image of Ishmael clinging to the coffin, it's so haunting. It just raises all these questions about fate and resilience and what it means to survive.
What do you think about Ishmael's survival? Is it just luck? Or is there something more to it?
I think it's really open to interpretation. Some people might see it as a sign of divine providence, others as a testament to human resilience in the face of overwhelming odds. You know, one of the excerpts you picked out was that very last line of the book.
Oh, right.
And I only am escaped alone to tell thee.
It's such a powerful ending.
It is. It really makes you think. What does it mean to you that Ishmael survives this whole thing? I mean, this encounter with fate and obsession.
It definitely stays with you, doesn't it?
It does.
I think it suggests that there's something important about just observing and reflecting on the world, even if it means being kind of on the sidelines, you know?
Makes you wonder if Melville is saying that storytelling itself is a form of survival.
Oh, interesting.
Ishmael lives to tell the tale, to pass on what he's learned.
That's a really interesting way to think about it. And it connects to how Melville brings in so many different voices and perspectives into the novel.
Right.
You have the Native Islanders and the Pacific Whalers and the New England Sailors. It's like he's creating this whole tapestry of human experience.
And he treats them all with respect, too, acknowledging the diversity and complexity of the world that he's depicting. That's something I admire about Moby Dick.
Me too. You know, thinking about everything we've talked about today, it's hard not to see some parallels to our own lives. We all have our own white whales in a way.
Right. Yes,
We obsess over those goals we're chasing.
and sometimes those pursuits can really take over.
They can.
They can blind us to what really matters.
Like Ahab. We get so fixated on the destination that we forget about the journey.
Exactly.
It's a good reminder to step back every now and then, appreciate the moment, the people around us. What about you? What really resonated with you from the excerpts that you chose?
I think for me, it was those little moments of beauty and humor.
Yeah.
You know, amidst all the darkness and tragedy, Melville's descriptions of the sea, the whales, even just life on board the ship, they're mesmerized.
Oh, they are. And his characters are just so vivid, full of life and wit. Even the ones who meet with these terrible fates. It makes Moby Dick such a page-turner, even though it's so complex and challenging.
I know. It's one of those books you can read over and over again.
Right.
And you discover something new every time, some layer of meaning that you didn't see before.
I feel exactly the same way. And it's a book that feels so relevant to what's going on in the world today. I mean, we're facing so many challenges. And Moby Dick reminds us that human ambition and greed can have these really devastating consequences.
It's a cautionary tale about the dangers of not respecting the natural world. But it's also a testament to the power of the human spirit. You know, that search for meaning that we all share.
So, for those of you listening, as you navigate your own journey, remember the lessons of Moby Dick. Chase your dreams, but don't let them consume you. Embrace life's complexities and cherish those connections you make along the way.
And remember that sometimes the greatest victories come from letting go.
That's a beautiful thought to end on.
It is.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into Moby Dick. It's been a pleasure exploring Melville's world with you.
The pleasure was all mine.
Until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep diving deep.